Hey, what's up guys? So what you can probably tell from the title already, Maelstrom is finally back for Elemental Shaman. Thank God. When they did the initial changes for Shadowlands for Elemental, it sounded interesting to me on paper, but it ended up just feeling unfinished and in a worse state than Maelstrom. Then 2 weeks before I recorded this, they removed the 2 resource system. They then implemented and turned it back into one system. And that one system ended up causing Elemental to be pretty much riddled with weird gameplay that didn't make any sense. And this was partially because of balancing, so we were hoping that they'd at least fix some balancing to make the resource work as they intended it. But 2 weeks later, here we are. I'm glad to announce that they brought Maelstrom back for Elemental Shaman. So let's take a look at exactly how this affects us. The state of Shaman right now is very similar to BFA in terms of gameplay. As you can see, if I hover over it here, Earthshock now costs 60 Maelstrom like it used to, Earthquake costs 60 Maelstrom, and also Elemental Blast costs 60 Maelstrom as well. So Elemental Blast is now something where it's every 12 seconds, so you can kind of replace Earthshock with it, but obviously you can't do it every single time you get to 60 Maelstrom, because if you get to 60 Maelstrom pretty fast, Elemental Blast will still be on cooldown. I was thinking of like Elemental Blast with Echoing Shock would be a great combo, but sadly they're on the same line, so there's nothing to talk about there. Now if you watched my last video, you'll probably remember that Echoing Shock takes the buffs you currently have active when it does the second cast, which means that when you use it on Earthshock, your second Earthshock would basically not do any damage because of the previous system where Earthshock didn't really have a cooldown, but if you use it with more stacks of the resource called Fulmination, then it would do more damage. But when you use it, you use the Fulmination, and then when it cast Earthshock the second time, it wouldn't have the Fulmination, so it would do horrible damage. But now if you use Echoing Shock and you use Earthshock after that, it will use Earthshock, and even though you don't have the Maelstrom, it's gonna cast it again. And because we don't have the damage buffs anymore for it, it will basically do the same amount of damage, which is really nice. Now, the issue with Earthquake and Earthshock is also solved, where Earthquake would basically do more damage single target than Earthshock would. So now Earthshock here, 2263 damage, Earthquake 1487. So on one target you want Earthshock, on 2 targets you want Earthquake. Now there is one thing with Earthquake right now where there's this legendary, which I crafted here. When you cast Earthshock, your next Earthquake will deal 250% additional damage, which it's strong on single target, and it's very strong on AoE as well. So let me show you. If I use a normal Earthquake, let's build some Maelstrom first. I made this bar just now, so it looks horrible, but okay, so Earthquake, let's put on this guy. 265 per tick. Now let's do an Earthshock, and then let's do an Earthquake straight after. Well, not straight after, but let's build the Maelstrom for the Earthquake. So Earthshock. Also, you saw how much damage that did. It actually does damage now. Okay, now we do Earthquake. It's hitting for 920 damage. That's actually an insane number. Like, it's hitting on... This is with 140 gear. This is without like the scaling in dungeons or whatever. I'm not using the socket exploit. Well, exploit. The thing where people go for an insane amount of sockets either. But basically, you're hitting for nearly 1000 with this gear. On how many mobs does Earthquake hit? Okay, from what I could read online, Earthquake doesn't seem to have an AoE cap, which is actually pretty insane. I don't know why it doesn't have an AoE cap when all the other classes have AoE caps, but here we are. So with current gear, you'd pretty much be hitting, well, with the gear I have, you hit for around 1000 on every single target. This is non-crit for every tick. I don't know how many ticks it does, but actually, let's check. Well, let's check how many ticks it does. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 ticks. So on every target, you would do 6k damage if it's buffed by the legendary. And that's non-crit. When we crit, we do 2.5 times the damage, as far as I know. So if you crit, you would do 2.5k damage. And Earthquake does not have an AoE cap. So let's say you pull 10 mobs, that's 60k damage. And that's excluding crits. That's pretty insane, if you think about it. And they buffed Lava Burst as well. As you can see, Lava Burst 1163 damage, Lightning Bolt 1024 damage. Lava Burst does not hit much harder than Lightning Bolt, but you have to remember Lava Burst crits every single time you hit with it, so it's very strong. Now, some other things they buffed, they also buffed Lightning Bolt and they buffed Chain Lightning. This is actually something I'm more happy about for enhancement because it doesn't seem to be hitting super hard on enhancement. But I'm also glad that they did it on Elemental because, well, Elemental really needed a buff. Whenever I tried it in raid testing, it was so far behind everyone else. that I just instantly swapped to enhancement again. But overall, I'm very happy with these changes. Even though we lost dev time on them trying something, I'm really glad that they decided to admit that it didn't work and they gave us the old system back instead of just being hard-headed and just staying with the new system even though it doesn't work. Because if I would have to play Elemental with the version that we had before this patch for the entire expansion, I think I would just reroll to a different class or basically only play enhancement on my Shaman. Now, one thing I would like to see them bring back is give us a bit more funneling power back. Since they nerfed our Flame Shock to be a shorter duration, and they reduced the tick rate by 50%, which is quite a lot. But before I can actually say what else I think should change, I kind of have to play around in dungeons and raid testing a little bit, because I've only been able to try it on dummies, which obviously isn't a normal testing environment. From what I've seen, the damage of Earthquake especially might be a bit overtuned right now, because I've been watching some dungeon runs and I think it does 40% of the overall damage, depending on the run, which is kind of crazy. Of course, this is also because we don't have a target cap. If you pull 10 mobs, you're gonna do a ton of damage compared to other classes. And this damage is, of course, modified by the legendaries, so you're doing way more damage than you would normally do. But besides that, I think we're in a very good spot right now, and I can't wait to try out raid testing and Mythic Plus on this character. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.